not about partisan politics in my view. There are no private beaches in Antigua and Barbuda. In law, practice, and common understanding, beach access to all beaches for locals is a right. If you're putting up fences to deter from that, you're not on the right side. If you instruct security to keep locals off the beaches, you and the security, who should know better, are not on the right side. If you're supporting locals being shunned from beaches, you're not on the right side. If you're using work, the kind of work many of our families have done and continue to do, as a rationale for co-signing that, you're not on the right side. Because it is the years of unpaid work that our ancestors did for generations that makes this an undebatable for me. We're not begging. The beach belongs to us. But in true Caribbean fashion, we're very willing to share. But if your idea of a Caribbean vacation includes the absence of black bodies unless in service, then you're not on the right side. And if that's what they told you, they are not on the right side. And if our government, of whatever hue, are not actively defending beach access all the time for locals, then they're wrong too. Beach access shouldn't constantly have to be relitigated. That's how I feel about it.
Sitting here thinking of what I should say on this day concerning our access to the beach as Antiguans. And I'm not going to repeat the things I've said before. I'm going to instead touch on something else that seems to be the real problem concerning access to the beach and the enforcing of what should be. The Beach Act is there. It says what should be done and what should transpire between investors and the development authority. When you bring in investors, as the cabinet say they go out and they seek investors, they're trying to improve our situation here. But they're creating a bigger problem. The cabinet itself, because the article and what transpired back then, a couple of weeks ago, is all under cabinet. Because you're the one who brings these investors here. When you encourage people to break the laws of your country, you are a criminal. So I'm saying cabinet is a criminal organization. You should be bringing investors here who wants to bring your people along, not alienate them. This is how the apartheid started. Not alienating your people, not trying to take their rights. Because you come and you're putting an investment, you're giving them something that they have to work for anyway. And you want to take the rights of the people. You want to disobey what is the law, the rights of the people. That's basically what these investors are doing. And they're being encouraged by cabinet. They're being encouraged by our prime minister, the development authority, who fail to stop these investors from blocking off entrances to the beaches. There are people in Mill Reef building beaches on pools on the beaches. There are people in Mill Reef have chains across the access to the beach. These things I have written to the Prime Minister, to DCA, hand delivered the letters myself. But there's nothing done because cabinet is encouraging these investors to do what they're doing. When are the people of Antigua and Barbuda, forget about these political things and political party, UPP, Labour Party, when are you going to stand up for what is your right? The Prime Minister and Cabinet is doing their best to make this a political issue. And I'm betting you're going to soon hear from Cabinet that they want to change the Beach Act. They want to amend this right that the people have to our beaches. Again, I'll say this. Antigua people has to realize this. Our lands were not given to us. They weren't left by the slave owners or anything. Antiguans purchased that land. Yes, you can say Papa Bird was the one who went forward and all of this, but Antiguans are the one who paid for this. And if you have investors coming in and want to utilize our lands, they should obey our laws. Do not build your properties on the beaches and do not fence off the beaches so that the people don't have access to this. When are we going to stand up to what is a criminal organization? The cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda in this present administration. Because that's what you are. Because this is what you're doing, you're telling investors to come here
Okay.
and break the laws of the country. And that gentleman, that investor, from the time he filed that suit in any court, he should be put on a plane, never to return to Antigua. And I am waiting for him to file that suit to see what the court system in Antigua and Barbuda does. Because basically, you are trying to take the rights of the people, and you're going to take a party to the court to take the rights of the people. The prime minister should be standing up against this thing because he is the one who is supposed to be defending his people. But I guess to him, money is more important.
Good afternoon once again, everyone. And now for our second big issue. Welcome to the second segment of this afternoon's program. It's Sunday, the 13th of July, 2025. It is now 2:29 here in the studios on Redcliffe Street in St. John's, Antigua. I'm Barbara, your host. Sitting in with me as co-host, we have Ian Henry. And the issue at hand, the beach is mine. I can bathe anytime. Is this still true? We have two guests to discuss this topic. We have Leon Chaku-Semister, an attorney at law, member of the United Progressive Party, a citizen and resident of Antigua and Barbuda, and a patriot. Good afternoon, Mr. Semister. How are you doing?
Good afternoon to you, Barbara. Good afternoon to Ian Henry Casey. And good afternoon to all your listeners and viewers. I'm all right. I'm okay.
Excellent. Okay. And joining us also, we have Joanne Hillhouse, author, journalist, beach user, citizen and resident of Antigua and Barbuda, and also a patriot. Good afternoon, Joanne. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
I am well, thanks. I am well. Okay. So this afternoon, we're going to be talking about the laws. We're going to be discussing whether or not what we think is real is real. A few generations of Antiguans and Barbudans have grown up with the belief that all of our beaches are public and that the law guarantees us, the public, access via land and sea to all the beaches on island. Yet, over and over, situations have cropped up where this right seems to be taken away or attempted to be taken away. Let's begin with you, attorney at law, Chaku-Semister. What does the law actually say about this? We've had many discussions about it. Can you help us to understand what exactly does the law say about this whole beach access issue?
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again. If you need help, hang up and then dial your operator.
Okay, we may have lost Chaku at this point. All right, Joanne, are you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, seems if we may have lost Chaku, and we're going to try to reconnect with him in a moment. But so we're gonna chat with you until we do. What do you hear about all this going on right now? I mean, we've promised Chaku that we're not necessarily talking about the case that's before the court because we can't do that at this point in time. We're talking generally about beach access and the constant recurring of challenges and people needing to challenge this whole situation. Give us an overview of your thoughts on this.
I do not understand why this keeps coming up. The law is very clear, as I understand it, but beyond the letter of the law, the spirit of it, the understanding that these beaches are ours ancestrally, in my opinion, is not up for debate. And it should pose no conflict. There's no reason why multiple users, visitors and locals alike, can't use the beach without problem. I stand on that because I don't know. I am Antiguan, born here. Ancestrally, when I say ancestrally, I mean generations of my ancestors worked and died in this land without compensation. And the right to go on a beach for respite, for relaxation, to learn to swim, which I'm currently doing. I mean, who is that harming? And why are our bodies on those beaches so abhorrent? That is a question for me. I don't think we should ever, if someone, security, whoever approaches us, we need to stand our ground on that. These are our beaches. That's how I feel about that.
Historically, can you give us any examples? I mean, There have been situations in the past where we have stood up. Are we still standing up? Do you have any memories of situations where we made it clear that this beach belongs to us?
So when I was still a full-time reporter, back in the 90s when I worked at the Antigua Sun, I remember covering a beach protest. Um, that it was at Long Bay. There was a fence that had been put up that went all the way out into the sea, and scores of Antiguans showed up and tore down that fence. I remember that. Um, I mean, obviously, as a reporter, I'm covering it, but it being a proud moment in the sense that, no, first of all, why do you want this fence here? But also, no, you can't put that fence to separate us from our beach. Um, and to be honest with you, that goes with some of the umbrellas and the chairs and the so on to say, this is not your space, this is our space. Just for investors and beachfront property owners to recognize that beach access, we're not asking. It is our right to be on those beaches. But yes, we have protested in the past. I see there was a protest recently. I don't know the details of the lawsuit, but uh, I don't see that us being on our beaches should be a problem for anyone. So
Other Caribbean islands, the argument sometimes is that in other Caribbean territories, there are some public beaches and there are some private beaches. Why should it be different here, is what one person is saying.
why should it be different here?
Mm.
Is that a serious question?
Well, yes. I mean, according to
But that's
this
my
text
answer.
here.
Is that a serious question? That's my answer. Like, who gives up a right? Like, we live here. We've always had access to our beaches, and now we're like, oh, well, other islands do it differently. They have private and public, so why can't we surrender? So cut off my arm, why don't you? It's the same thing. You're telling me to give up part of myself. For what? Because some other place does it? Does that make sense? So I ask, is that a real question?
What should we expect from our lawmakers, from our leaders at this point in time, recognizing that, as we've said over and over, this issue is raised? What are we expecting from them?
I don't expect them to use jobs as a way to shame us into feeling like we don't have a right to protest or to be on our beaches. Not even a form of protest, it's just a right to be there. So I hear this thing come up of, the hotels provide jobs. Yes, the hotels have always provided jobs. And before that, the sugarcane field provided jobs. You know what's different? That we have more freedoms now. And we should surrender those freedoms and our leaders should not protect those freedoms. That sounds like going backwards to me. So I do not want to hear, because we all have families that work in the hotel industry. But guess what? We're all still people. We're all still people, and our leaders are to protect our rights. And yes, they must bring opportunities here, but part of negotiating and part of bringing those opportunities to my mind, I'm not in politics or diplomacy, but part of that it should be made clear what are the laws of the land. And we have a clear law, we beach access, and we have a clear understanding, we beach access. That should be made clear to any investors.
What is your understanding, Joanne, as we wait to reconnect with Chaku to give us the letter of the law, so to speak? What is your understanding of the law concerning beach access in Antigua and Barbuda?
Okay, so unless it has been upgraded, which I'm not aware that it has, per the Physical Planning Act, there should be at least one public landward access to every beach in Antigua and Barbuda. Where there's no alternative public access, traditional public use of a private landward access to an existing private development shall be sufficient grounds for establishing a public right of way that access for the purpose of access to the beach by public. So my understanding of that is there should be public access, and if there isn't, then a way should be made. Where land is acquired, no, the last section, in this section, traditional use means peaceable, open, and uninterrupted enjoyment of the beach by the people. So my understanding is that there should be public access, landward access to every beach in Antigua and Barbuda.
And of course, the question
That's
some
based,
go
and I'm
ahead.
basing that on the Physical Planning Act of 2003.
2003. And to our
Yeah.
knowledge, there's been no change to that, no major change to that we are aware of. And so, having read that, Joanne, where does that leave us as people? How does that compare to what's been going on recently?
I would say, just as a sidebar, there's movements taking place in Jamaica, I believe. I don't know the details of it, but their law was different, as in their law, beach access predated independence. So access to beaches in Jamaica were very limited based on that law, which I learned when I didn't learn about the law until quite recently, but I learned about limited access to beaches when I was living in Jamaica, when I was studying there. And to me, the contrast was so alarming, so that we were already, that's why people make the comparison between us and other places. We were already living the ideal experience of it, in the sense that we have access to our beaches in our common understanding and in the law. I know that in Jamaica they're agitating, and I think they've had some breakthrough going forward, but the law it still stands. So um, I would say that my understanding is that we have a right to be on any beach in Antigua and Barbuda. We have a right to access to any beach in Antigua and Barbuda. Security can ask us where we're going, because they tend to do that when you look like us. They don't do that to everyone. They can ask us where we're going, but they can't stop us from going on our beaches. And so it doesn't even require a lot. Just if you're there, stay there if that's where you want to be. That's your beach. No one can stop you. That's how I see it.
Understood fully. Now, I'm not sure if we have Chaku back on the phone line. Joe, do we have Chaku's yet? We are trying to reconnect with him, so we're working on that. Now, one of my uncles, now in his 80s, spoke about cutting a fence like the one you mentioned at Long Bay, down in the Dickinson Bay area when he was a young man. So I'm going to suggest if he says a young man, he's thinking about being in his 20s, so 50 years ago. 50 years ago, we were removing wire fences out in the water. 30 years ago, we were doing that. And here we are in 2025. What is it that has prevented our authorities from making sure that all investors understand this law that at one time was something we were so proud of, and but maybe some of us still are, but some seem to see it as a maybe we enforce it, maybe we don't. What are we lacking? What's gone wrong, Joanne?
Well, I don't want to say poor negotiating skills, or maybe going to the negotiating table thinking that you have no leverage. I don't know what it is, but I know that they're on the wrong side of this. And I know when you talk about your uncle going back decades, one of the things I try to do one on one, anytime I come across young people talking about they don't have access to beaches, I remind them that these beaches are theirs and they do have access. So maybe they're trying to wear us down, but we need to keep passing down the message so that the younger ones understand that this is a non-negotiable for us. We must live and work in this country and dead, and that's it. We must not, the thing that people come here to enjoy, we must not have access to it. I mean, these same hotels promote staycations in the off season. How convenient. But the rest of the time, we're not supposed to be there? What are we talking about? And the elephant in the room is that there's a racial component to it. There is a local versus there's so many components to it that we don't want to discuss. When I was sitting, and this is not a beach, but when I was sitting at the food court at the top of what's that, Thames Street, and the person sent to call police to remove me. I was buying, I was drinking, I was not in anybody's way, I was occupying one chair. The weaponizing of police against people, our security against people who born here and live here, who work here, but must not sit on the beach, must be stopped. And it stops with us individually resisting and passing on the knowledge to the young people that this is theirs. Yes, we're not supposed to break the law, but the law is on our side on this. And beyond the law, The spirit of it is on our side. This is our ancestral home. What are we doing?
Do you, Joanne, entertain any concerns in light of the current structure of the Houses of Parliament in Antigua? Do you entertain concerns that if, for instance, the government were to move towards amending the law, do you entertain concerns that there will be no resistance, there'll be no pushback, there'll be no one to cause the government to rethink such an idea? And let me say why I'm saying that. I've been working on a theory for the last, I don't know, Barbara will probably tell you for how long, where I am very concerned about the silence of the majority of people in Antigua who don't agree with certain things that are happening, not necessarily all politically related, but they don't agree with certain things that are happening. But they resort to WhatsApp chat groups to express their views rather than doing things and saying things which could impact on the things that they are concerned about. And that's why I pose this particular issue, because as we commonly say it in Antigua, the eyes have it. What is your concern in relation to that particular issue?
I think it's a fair concern. I think that, and I would extend grace to most people in this regard. I think most people are getting up every day and trying to make life. They're not focused on every niche issue. For me, I've blogged about the beaches, jihadli.com. I've blogged about the beaches going back years. I mean, two issues you can say that I've been like a dog with a bone on is beaches and um, access to public buildings without policing of women's bodies and for some reason our shoulders because we can't wear arm sleeves or whatever and can't show knees. So these have been two issues. So everybody has their pet issues, the point I'm making. It doesn't always align. It's people focused on the day-to-day of getting their kids to school and whatever. So sometimes they're going to miss things. Even if they read the papers, even if they watch the news, even if they listen to everything. And then as well, people protest in different ways. So that the people who are protesting are not only the people who are on the street. People protest in different ways. Even the whispers in the WhatsApp groups is a form of, registering your disgruntlement, keeping it alive. So it's not without merit. I would hope that it never comes to them looking at the law and that all of those different forms of protest, if it comes to that, can come together and let them know that this is not what we stand on and not politicize it, because that is also the danger, that we treat politics like tribes. And it's not just an Antiguan thing. We see what's happening in America now. We treat politics like tribes, and so we can't have an opinion that doesn't align with whatever our quote unquote political party is. Well, no, we can have opinions in our best interest. The people who went to that hike that we did to Seaforth Beach that day, they might not be walking up Market Street in protest, but they're showing up on the beach to say this is ours. So my hope is that if it comes to shove, we will show up in our different ways. It's important to keep the message out there so that people don't lose the plot, because as I said, people are getting up every day and going about their lives and not paying attention to every single niche issue. And that's the danger. And that's why we write about it, and that's why we do what we're doing now and talk about it, and hope that the politicians take heed and don't do things that go against the interests of the people that they are empowered to serve.
Well, there's a view that if something is important enough to us, like this issue, that perhaps we should be looking to protect it by constitutional protection rather than leaving it as an ordinary act of parliament, which can be amended, as we have seen with the Barbuda Land Act, for example, that was passed in 2007, I think, is when it was passed, and then it was repealed in about 2016, it did not have constitutional protection, and therefore a simple majority in Parliament made that change. And I'm just wondering if we are now starting to see the need for constitutional protections for the things that we hold dear in the country.
I'm going to put that question to Chaku,
Chaku's
from
back.
one lawyer to the other. Chaku, what are your thoughts there?
About the access to the beach being constitutionally protected? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the few things we really have left in Antigua that all of us, irrespective of religion, politics, ethnicity, that we share, and I think we hold dear. And what we're seeing over and over again are attempts to limit our access to the beach. And this is across the region. You see, Gabby's Jack, the beach is mine, that was more than 40 years ago. In 1982, I think Gabby said that. We know there's a movement in St. Lucia seeking to protect access to the beach. In Trinidad, seeking to protect access to the beach. In Barbados for many years. In some instances in Jamaica. But what is clear, and so it has been mentioned before, is our Physical Planning Act, Section 50, subsection 1. It's mandatory that we have access to the beach, and the access must be meaningful access. We look around this country and we are seeing more and more barriers are going up, preventing persons from accessing the beach. We have seen approximately 3 years ago, 22 Barbudans who are going to the beach on a traditional access route were hauled before the courts for trespassing. The matter eventually was dismissed, but the merits were never really dealt with. We have seen cases right here in Antigua and Barbuda. We have seen down at Valley Church Beach, where you find a chain across there from time to time. We have seen it down at Perns Point. We have seen it at some beaches that are not very popular. But that's the way it will start. And all of us have the absolute right to have access to our beaches. The Physical Planning Act is a legislation that I think would have put an end to that when it was passed in 2003. But long before that legislation, that we are seeing that we always believe we can go to any beach at any time. But more and more, the authorities succumbing to the desire of developers and investors are not showing that they have the will. They show that they do not have the courage to say to the investors and developers, yes, we welcome your investment, we welcome your development, but tell you, in Antigua and Barbuda, landward access to the beach is something that is not up for discussion. And just as how the case he had pointed out, that the legislation is not enough because Parliament can easily change the legislation and make it adverse, as we have seen in the Barbuda Land Act. And so the constitutional protection, and let it be a right in the Constitution that cannot be changed nilly-willy. And that is what is important. That it is sad, but we have reached the stage that there are issues that we take for granted, that now we are seeing that we should not be taking these for granted, and it's absolutely necessary for them to be constitutionally protected.
You know what, when you both speak of this, it leaves me thinking, I suppose we're expecting that we have leaders who have our best interests at heart. That should always be our thinking. I mean, what next do we need to put into the Constitution? I mean, I hear you, and I think it would be fantastic if certain things are protected there, but is this the route that we have to go for many of these things?
If we're seeing the behavior of our present legislators who understand and know that the law exists, but seek not to enforce the law. You see, my quarrel is not only with the developers and the investors. It must be with our government, the authorities, because the Physical Planning Act is clear. Not only tells you in the first subsection of Section 50 that there must be landward access, but it went as far as to say if there is a development and there's no landward access, that to get a development permit, you must provide a landward access. And we have to speak of meaningful access. For example, we have down at Deep Bay, a place that was a very popular beach long before Royal Antiguan came. Then Royal Antiguan came and they cut off the regular access and they provided an access on the northern side of their property. But it's a long drive if you're driving, then you park your vehicle, you cross a bridge, and from the beach you cannot see your vehicle. So what that may mean, if every time I go to that beach, there's a possibility, or it actually happened, that my vehicle is going to be broken into, it's going to discourage me from going to that beach. We're seeing at Burns Point, security asking for your name, asking for why you're going to the beach, how long you're going to stay. And these seems to be simple things. But these are the foundation of taking away your rights. All right, my name is John Smith. Later on we may hear you must have an ID, a government-issued ID that is valid. And we cannot allow this to go on. And that is why we are raising this public conversation that all of us, irrespective of our political affiliation, should seek to protect access to the beach for our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. And it's sad that we are where we are today, but we just have to continue to press on. For example, an event that took place on Whit Monday, it was a public awareness event. We went to beaches where access is not a problem. Plenty beachgoers want people to understand that we are raising the issue of access to our beaches because more and more we see that being taken away from us. And we cannot sit in our hands and do nothing, however small.
And
yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the comment that you made earlier in relation to having to put everything in the Constitution. No, that is not really where I'm going on that. But I think that as a people, we have to engage in discussions around all of the issues that impact us. And there's several issues that impact our lives and our ways of living. And we have to make a determination as to what we think is important. When you look at a little 5-year-old child and you say to yourself, throughout my lifetime, I have been able to enjoy this particular activity, this particular custom, this thing which I consider part of my culture or our culture. And you look at a 5-year-old child and you say you want to make sure that that is preserved for that 5-year-old child and the 5-year-old's children when they eventually come. In other words, into the future. I think that is how we have to make a determination as to what goes into our constitutions. Our constitutions are very sterile documents, and I think that we have taken a very distant approach to our constitution, the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda. And we have not recognized that it should be a living and breathing instrument which articulates it tells you about the people of Antigua and Barbuda at a particular juncture, and which should therefore be we should always be reviewing it to determine what changes do we need to make. I mean, I feel very strongly that it was an opportunity missed when the Barbuda Land Act was not given or the provisions of the Barbuda Land Act were not given constitutional protection in 2007 when that law was passed, particularly bearing in mind what has happened subsequently, all of the things that have happened subsequently. But I think that we have to start to see the Constitution as a means for protecting and preserving us and our culture and our country for generations yet unborn.
Thank you very much, Anne. All right, I'm going to ask you both to give us your closing thoughts in a minute and a half or so. Going to start with you, Joanne, your closing thoughts?
I would say that what Anne just said was very moving to me. That it's not about what it's really about is about who we are and what we value and what we want to pass on. I went to the beach with my dad some months ago. I think it was for his birthday. We were driving around and we stopped at Pigeon Point. I think that's the name of that beach. And he was like, "No, this isn't the beach I used to come to when I was a kid." And I was like, "This is the beach." And he was like, "No, it's further in." And so there's a security gate. Well, not a gate, there's a security hut and there's like a chain thingy that's on the ground, and there's a restaurant. And so I said, "Okay, well let's go further and see." And I just told the security that we're walking in. Um, and we walked in and we found the other beach that he was talking about. And I would never have known about that if he had not said that the beach that I knew in my lived experience was not the beach from his childhood memory. And to me, that's kind of the point, is that all these places and spaces that are part of our culture and our collective experience as people in this country should matter to us, not just as resorts or for money making, but as sort of part of our journey. A journey which began in a very dark place on this island and in this region, but which we have transformed into something that looks like life. And it's about preserving that life. It might seem like a small, frivolous thing, but things don't get taken away in one fell swoop. The incremental, what Shaku said about, it begins with, what's your name? What's your purpose? How long are you going to be here? We've seen examples of that in other countries, and we need to be mindful. I mean, I suppose even me saying I'm going in as opposed to just going in is a bit of me already sort of giving into that. So the point is that you got to kind of hold to the core of what matters to us as a people. And it's not just about the beaches, it's about who we are, it's about what belongs to us. It's about our journey as people in this country. And we have to fight for that. Otherwise, we're going backwards.
Joanne, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. A very sensitive issue for some of us, for many of us, hopefully for all of us living in Antigua and Barbuda. Access to our beaches, access always to our beaches. Attorney at Law Leon Shaku Simister, can I ask you to give us some closing thoughts, please?
Yes. You see, the question of access is a question of a right that we have. And where we see that this right is being eroded, it is necessary for us to take steps to protect this right. And it is in that vein that I completely support the position that constitutional protection for the right of access to our beaches is important, especially that we have observed that since tourism is is a real big product for Antigua and Barbuda, and building on or near our beaches, and persons are promising isolation, tranquility. Nobody will bother you. Well, we are not bothering anybody, but part of who we are is our beaches and our right to have access to it. And where it is clear that it is slipping away, whatever instrument exists to protect it, and in this case, the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, we should be heading that way. So 50 years from now, when people like me are already gone, that our people still have the right and would not have to fight to have access to the beaches. Thank you.
And thank you. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. And let's just hope that, in 50 years, they're not having the same conversation, because it feels as if 50 years later, we are having a conversation that people had 50 years ago. Ian Henry, any closing thoughts from you? I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon, for helping the conversations along. Any closing thoughts from you?
shall I quote one of our great calypsonians? Nobody gonna run me.
There we go.
And I'll leave it right there.
Leaving it there. All right. So Joanne, Chaku, and thank you so much. I want to also, before we jump and close off, just to say thank you to Robert Emmanuel, who saved us this afternoon. I'll leave it there, but he knows what he did, and I want to say thank you for saving us, Robert Emmanuel. There we go.